Hi, I'm Denisa and I'm a home baker who likes to experiment with sourdough bread. This winter holidays, I made a Romanian sourdough sweet bread called cozonac cu maiam that is traditionally put on the table for Christmas and Easter holidays. Stay with me and I'll show you how it's done.